Ladies and gentlemen, look at me, because the life you want is on the other side of the lie. You keep repeating. You say you're ready, but your effort disappears the moment comfort calls your name. You don't lack talent, you lack truth. You've been negotiating with pain, performing for likes, and hiding behind someday. Like it's a strategy. Hear me. Motivation is not coming to rescue you. Your feelings are not a compass. They're a weather report. And if you keep letting the forecast decide your discipline, you'll stay broke in potential forever. Today, we end the excuses. Today, we expose the comfort addiction. And today, you learn how champions move when nobody's clapping, how they ignite in 2 minutes, lock in for 1 hour, and burn every escape route. If you're tired of almost, prove it. Become the mission-driven pro, starting right now, not next Monday. Look at me and listen closely, because we're about to pull the mask off the lie. You've been telling yourself for the last 6 months, the last 6 years, maybe your whole life, you're sitting there telling everybody who will listen that you're ready to blow up, that you're ready for the big stage, that you're ready for the life you see in your head. But the truth is, you're a fraud. You're a fraud because your commitment is conditional and your grind is based on a mood that changes like the wind. You want the prize, but you're terrified of the price. You want the crown, but you're allergic to the sweat. You want the freedom, but you're a slave to your comfort. Stop lying to yourself. Stop telling your mom, your friends, and your kids that you're trying, because trying is just a polite word for failing with a good excuse. You think you're stuck because of the economy, or because you don't have the right connections, or because you didn't go to the right school. But I'm telling you right now, you don't know why you're stuck. You have no idea what's really holding you back. But by the time I'm done with you, you're going to realize that the only thing standing between you and that destiny is the version of you that thinks he needs to feel like it before he does it. I remember a Tuesday morning, about 4:15 a.m. The room was freezing, the kind of cold that bites at your bones. And I was staring at a pair of worn out running shoes by the door. My back was aching, my head was throbbing, and every single cell in my body was screaming for me to crawl back under those warm covers. I sat on the edge of the bed for 20 minutes, just debating with myself, arguing with my own destiny. I looked at those shoes and I hated them. I hated the road. I hated the dark. I didn't feel motivated. I didn't feel inspired. I felt like a man who wanted to quit. But I looked at my reflection in that cracked mirror, and I realized that if I stayed in that bed, I wasn't just choosing sleep. I was choosing to remain nobody. I was choosing to let my family down. I was choosing to stay small. I had to realize that my feelings didn't matter, but my future did. You want the result, but you run from the repetition. You want the result, but you run from the repetition. You owe it to yourself to be better than your excuses. You owe it to you. You owe it to you. The real problem is that you become a convenience junkie. You only work when the sun is out and the coffee is hot and your favorite playlist is bumping. You've got a fair weather work ethic. When things are easy, you're a lion. But the second the pressure hits, the second the fatigue sets in, you turn back into a house cat. You're the reason your dream is delayed, not the boss, not the bank, not the haters. You, because you've decided that your comfort is more important than your calling. You're waiting for a spark of motivation to hit you like lightning, but motivation is a feeling, and feelings are liars. You're addicted to the dopamine hit of talking about what you're going to do, but you're ghosting the starting blocks every time the work gets heavy. You're waiting for a feeling that isn't coming. There's a psychological mechanism at play here that's killing your potential, and it's called affective forecasting error. Your brain is literally lying to you about how you're going to feel in the future. You tell yourself at 10 p.m. that you're going to wake up at 5 a.m. and conquer the world because at 10 p.m. you're comfortable and fed. But when 5 a.m. actually rolls around, your brain resets and starts forecasting the pain of the cold air and the hard work. And it tricks you into thinking that tomorrow will somehow be easier. It won't be. Tomorrow is in a magic land where you suddenly become a beast. Tomorrow is just another today that you're going to waste if you don't change your identity right now. Your brain is designed to keep you safe and comfortable, but greatness is dangerous and uncomfortable. You are in a war with your own biology. And right now, your biology is winning. I'm giving you a tool right now, and I want you to use it before you even have time to think about it. It's called the 120-second ignition. The moment your brain starts giving you an excuse, the moment you think about hitting snooze or skipping that phone call or putting off that workout, you are forbidden from stopping for exactly 120 seconds. You don't have to do the whole hour. You don't have to finish the whole project, but you must execute at 100% intensity for those 2 minutes. You get those gym shoes on. You open that laptop and type the first paragraph. You pick up the phone and dial the number. You don't negotiate. You don't debate. You don't wait for a sign. You ignite. Most of the time, the friction is stopping you dies before those 120 seconds are up. You're not tired. You're just uninspired because you haven't started moving. Movement creates the mood, not the other way around. Imagine it's 6 p.m. and you just got home from a job that drains your soul. You're exhausted. You're hungry. The couch is calling your name. And you've got a side business you're supposed to be building, but your brain is telling you you've done enough today. Just relax. This is the moment. This is the championship game. You don't think about the 4 hours of work ahead of you. You don't think about how tired you are. You look at your laptop and you apply the 120-second ignition. You sit down, you open the screen, and you tell yourself, I am just going to give this 2 minutes of fire. You start typing, you start researching, you start building, and suddenly, at 122 seconds, that fog in your head starts to clear. The tired version of you starts to die, and the warrior version of you starts to wake up. You realize that you weren't actually exhausted. You were just bored with being average. When you start living this way, you undergo an identity shift that no one can take away from you. You shift from being a mood-driven amateur to becoming a mission-driven pro. An amateur works when he feels like it. A pro works because he's got a mission that's bigger than his feelings. You become the person who doesn't need a motivational video to get out of bed. You become the person who doesn't need the stars to align to get the job done. You become a person of your word. When you say you're going to do something, it's as good as done, because your feelings are no longer the boss of your life. You start walking differently, you start talking differently, you start attracting people who operate at that same elite level because they recognize the fire in your eyes. You aren't just doing the work, you are the work. So here's my challenge to you, and I want you to hear me loud and clear. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. The perfect moment is a myth designed to keep you broke and miserable. You use that 120-second ignition today, not tomorrow morning. Not next Monday. Today, the very next time you feel that pull toward comfort, the very next time you feel like taking the easy way out, I want you to ignite. I want you to show your excuses that they have no power over you. I want you to show your feelings that they are subordinate to your will. You've been playing small for too long. You've been settling for good enough while greatness is calling your name. It's time to wake up. It's time to grow up. It's time to show up. You owe it to you. You owe it to you. You owe it to you. Now go out there and get what's yours. Stop performing for a crowd that isn't paying you and start producing in a room where nobody can see you. Because the truth is, you are obsessed with the harvest, but you are absolutely terrified of the soil. You want the world to see your light. You want the stage. You want the viral moment. And you want the standing ovation. But you won't stay in the dark long enough to actually build the power source that sustains the glow. You think the reason you haven't made it yet is a marketing problem or a networking problem. But I'm telling you right now, you don't know why you're stuck. You think you're waiting for an opportunity. But the truth is, you're just hiding from the isolation required to be great. You want the public praise, but you're dodging the private pain. You want the public praise, but you're dodging the private pain. You are addicted to the likes of people who don't even like themselves. And you are sacrificing your destiny on the altar of temporary validation. Stop lying to yourself. You're more worried about looking like a winner than actually winning. I remember being in a basement in Detroit years ago when the walls were sweating and the only light was a single buzzing bulb hanging from a wire. I was recording content. I was writing. I was pouring my soul into a microphone. and I looked at my phone and realized I had 0 views, 0 comments, and $0 in the bank from this dream of mine. I remember sitting in the dead of night. The house was silent, my family was asleep, and the silence was so loud, it felt like it was mocking me, asking me, who are you doing this for, Eric? If nobody ever claps, are you still going to work this hard? If nobody ever sees this, is it still worth your life? I had to realize in that moment that if I was doing it for the applause, I was already dead. Because when the applause stops, your work ethic stops. I had to learn to love the sweat when nobody was cheering. I had to learn to love the grind when the room was empty. You want the platform, but you hate the preparation. You owe it to the gift. You owe it to the gift. The real problem with you is that you've become a digital performer. You spend more time editing the vibe of your life on social media than you do editing the character of your soul. In reality, you're posting about the gym instead of lifting the weights, and you're tweeting about the grind instead of actually grinding in silence where it counts. You're seeking a hit of significance from strangers because you don't have the self-respect that comes from finishing a task when no one is watching. You're a fraud in the dark and a celebrity in your head. You're the reason your dream is delayed because you're waiting for a fan base to motivate you. But fans only show up for the finished product. They don't show up for the process. You are trying to build a skyscraper on a foundation of sand because you want the view from the top, but you're skipping the digging in the dirt. You're more concerned with your personal brand than your personal brilliance. Let's talk about the science of why you're failing, because your brain is literally playing a trick on you called dopamine loop addiction. Every time you tell someone what you're going to do or you post a picture of your starting point, your brain releases a hit of dopamine that makes you feel like you've already achieved the goal. You're getting the reward without the work. So your brain loses the hunger to actually finish the mission. You are literally talking yourself out of your own success. You are replacing real, hard, earned satisfaction with cheap, instant gratification. Your brain wants the easy like, but your soul needs the difficult victory. You are caught in a cycle of seeking external validation to quiet your internal insecurity. And as long as you need them to see you, you will never be able to see yourself. You are sacrificing your long-term legacy for a short-term notification. I'm giving you a tool today that is going to feel like a prison sentence at first, but it's going to set you free. It's called the Dark Horror Lockdown. Starting right now, you are required to designate 60 minutes every single day where the world does not exist. This is not quiet time or meditation. This is a lockdown. You turn the phone off, not on silent, not face down, but completely. You close the tabs, you shut the door, and you work on your primary craft in total. Absolute silence, no music to get you in the mood, no podcast to learn while you work. Just the raw friction of your mind hitting the task. You are forbidden from seeking any outside input or providing any outside output for 60 minutes. If you can't be alone with your work for 1 hour, you don't deserve the career you're dreaming about. Think about how this looks tonight. You get home or you finish your day job, and instead of hopping on the live stream to tell people you're about to work, you go into your room and you initiate the lockdown. You're sitting there with your notebook or your laptop or your instrument, and for the first 15 minutes, your brain is going to itch. You're going to feel the urge to check your notifications. You're going to feel the need to see who messaged you, and you're going to feel lonely, but you stay in it. At 30 minutes, the itch stops and the focus starts. You start producing work that has depth because you aren't distracted by the surface. At 50 minutes, you're in a flow state that most people haven't felt in years because they're too busy being connected to be great. You finish that hour and you haven't told a soul what you did, but you look in the mirror and you just got better. This practice is how you undergo an identity shift from an attention seeker to the silent architect. The silent architect doesn't need a crowd to feel powerful because his power comes from his competence, not his comment section. You become the person who is more satisfied by a finished project than a viral post. You become someone who values the blueprints over the building, You start to realize that the most important work of your life will always happen when nobody is looking. You stop being a person who looks like a winner and you become a person who cannot be defeated because you've already won the war against your own vanity. You become a person of substance in a world of shadows. You start to move with a quiet confidence because you know what you built in the dark can survive any storm in the light. My challenge to you is simple, but it's going to hurt. Go dark on the excuses, go dark on the vanity, and go dark on the need for people to know you're working. Do the dark horror lockdown today. Not when you have a better setup, not when you feel inspired. But today, if you want the life that 1% of people have, you have to do what 99% of people are too weak to do. And that is work without a witness. Stop being a slave to the like button and start being a master of your own destiny. You want the glory, then you better start loving the gloom. You want the stage, then you better start worshiping the practice. You owe it to your potential. You owe it to your potential. You owe it to your potential. Now shut up, turn the phone off, and get to work. Stop looking for a door when you're standing right in front of a window you're too afraid to climb through. You keep telling yourself that you're waiting for the right equipment, the right funding, or the right season to launch. But the truth is you aren't waiting for resources. You're hiding behind a lack of them to justify your cowardice. You think you're being strategic by waiting for the perfect setup. But you're actually just being a professional procrastinator who's addicted to the comfort of someday. You want the outcome, but you're married to your excuses. You want the outcome, but you're married to your excuses. You're complaining about the lack of a ladder while you're standing in front of a climbing wall. And you think you know why you're stuck. You think it's a lack of stuff, but you don't, not yet. You don't realize that your missing pieces are actually your biggest competitive advantage. But you're too busy playing the victim to see the weapon in your hand. Stop lying to yourself. You're the reason your dream is delayed. I remember when I was homeless, living out of abandoned buildings where the only thing I had to my name was a vision and a voice. I didn't have a high-def camera. I didn't have a lighting kit. I didn't have a studio with acoustic foam on the walls. I remember standing in the middle of a park, the wind howling so loud it threatened to drown out my words, holding a cheap crack recording device that I had to tape together just to keep the batteries from falling out. I felt the grit of the dirt under my fingernails and the sting of the cold on my face. And for a second, I almost convinced myself that I couldn't record that day because the quality wasn't right. I almost told myself that important people didn't record in the dirt. But then I realized that if the message was powerful enough, the dirt wouldn't matter. I realized that if I waited for a studio, the world would never hear what I had to say. I had to use the wind. I had to use the cold. I had to use the struggle as the very proof that my words were real. You want the luxury, but you loathe the labor. You want the luxury, but you loathe the labor. You owe it to the struggle. You owe it to the struggle. The real problem is that you've developed a consumer mindset instead of a creator mindset. You believe that success is something you buy or something you're given, rather than something you manufacture out of thin air. You've convinced yourself that you lack the tools to win when you actually just lack the will to start. You're sitting there scrolling through other people's finished products, comparing your day one to their year 10, and using their polished results as a reason why you can't even begin. You're the reason your dream is delayed because you're waiting for the world to give you a permission slip in the form of a check or a cosign. You're making excuses for your laziness by calling it a lack of opportunity. You're standing in a gold mine with a plastic spoon and complaining that you don't have a shovel. Stop it. You have everything you need to take the first step, but you're too busy looking at the mountain to look at your own feet. There's a psychological mechanism at play here that's keeping you paralyzed, and it's called an external locus of control. Your brain has built a defense mechanism to protect your ego by convincing you that your failure is due to missing resources. It saves you from having to admit that you just haven't worked hard enough yet. It's a psychological safety blanket. If you believe the system is rigged or the tools are missing, then your lack of progress isn't your fault. It's the world's fault. This is a trap. By blaming your environment, you're handing over your power to that environment. You are literally giving away your keys to the people, and things you claim are holding you back. You are choosing to be a prisoner of your circumstances because it's easier than being the architect of your own solution. You're trading your greatness for the comfort of being a victim. I'm giving you a tool right now that's going to strip away every single lie you've told yourself this year. It's called the What's in My Hand audit right now. In this moment, you are forbidden from thinking about what you don't have. You are to take exactly 30 seconds to list 3 things you currently possess that can move the needle, even if it's just by an inch. It could be a smartphone with a camera. It could be a single contact in your phone, or it could be 60 minutes of time that you usually spend watching television. Once you identify those 3 things, you must use at least one of them to take a concrete action in the next 30 minutes. No planning, no researching, no getting ready. You use what's in your hand and you use it right now. If all you have is a pen and a napkin, you write the business plan on that napkin. If all you have is a phone, you make that awkward call. Stop looking for what's missing and start mastering what's present. Imagine this. You've been saying for 3 years that you want to start a podcast, but you keep telling yourself you need a $500 microphone in a soundproof room. You're sitting in your car on your lunch break, and the old you would just scroll through Instagram and sigh about how unfair it is that you don't have the gear. But today, you apply the What's in My Hand audit. You realize you have a voice, you have a free recording app on your phone, and you have a quiet car. You don't wait for the studio. You hit record right there in the driver's seat. You talk for 10 minutes about your passion. It's not perfect. The audio isn't studio quality. Your heart is pounding because you're doing it wrong. But you hit save. You just did more in 10 minutes with a phone than you did in 3 years with a plan. You just broke the back of your own resistance. When you start living this way, you transition from being a victim of circumstance to becoming a master of execution. You become the person who makes a way when there is no way. You become the individual that people look at and wonder, how did they do so much with so little? You realize that the lack of resources wasn't a wall. It was a weight room. It was making you stronger. It was forcing you to be more creative, more resilient, and more innovative than the people who had everything handed to them. You start to see every missing piece as a challenge to your genius rather than a threat to your future. You stop being a person who asks, why me? And you start being a person who says, watch me. You become someone who isn't defined by what they have, but by what they do with what they have. My challenge to you is direct and is non-negotiable. Stop the search and start the execution. Use the What's in My Hand audit today, not when the weekend comes, not when you get your tax return. Today you have enough. You are enough. You've been using lack as a shield for your fear for far too long, and it's time to drop the shield and pick up the sword. The world doesn't care about your excuses, and your destiny doesn't care about your missing tools. Your destiny is waiting for you to realize that the only thing you're actually missing is the courage to be imperfect. Stop being a spectator of your own potential and start being the player coach of your own life. You want the win, then play with the cards you were dealt. You want the breakthrough, then break through with your bare hands. You owe it to your legacy. You owe it to your legacy. You owe it to your legacy. Now go use what you've got and make it happen. You are dying in the Alamo zone, and you're wondering why your life feels like a desert, even though you're standing 10 feet away from the oasis. You're operating at 90%, and you're actually angry that you haven't received 100% of the reward. But I'm here to tell you that in the kingdom of greatness, 90% is the same as 0. You're giving just enough to keep your conscience quiet, but not nearly enough to make the world take notice. You want the top tier life, but you're giving mid-tier effort. You want the top tier life, but you're giving mid-tier effort. You're trying instead of doing. And trying is just a loud, expensive way of giving yourself permission to fail with your dignity intact. You think you're stuck because the door is locked. You don't realize the door is wide open, but you're too scared to leave your luggage behind. You think you know what's holding you back, but you don't. Not yet, because the thing holding you back isn't a lack of talent. It's the safety net you're still clutching in your sleep. Stop lying to yourself. You aren't ill, and you're just mostly in is how dreams go to die. I remember a time when I was trying to transition into my full-time calling, but I was still keeping one foot in my old world because I was terrified of what would happen if the stage didn't catch me. I was working a job that didn't fit my soul, but it paid the bills. And every day I go to that office and I give them my body, but my spirit was somewhere else. I remember sitting in my car in the parking lot, gripping the steering wheel so hard, my knuckles turned white, watching the clock tick down to 8:59 a.m. I felt like a prisoner walking to the gallows. I had the vision in my head, I had the tapes recorded, I had the fire in my belly, but I was still clocking in for someone else's dream because I was playing it safe. I was almost a success, I was almost free, but I realized that as long as I had that backup plan, I would never have the desperation required to make the primary plan work. I had to realize that my safety was actually my stagnation. I had to choose between the security of a paycheck and the sovereignty of my soul. You want the security, but you crave the sovereignty. You want the security, but you crave the sovereignty. You owe it to the man you're supposed to be. You owe it to you. You owe it to you. The real problem is that you've built a life designed around exit strategies. You never fully commit to the relationship. You never fully commit to the business, and you never fully commit to the health because you want to make sure you have a way out if things get uncomfortable. You're living a plan B life and wondering why plan A isn't manifesting. You're the reason your dream is delayed because you're operating with a spirit of hesitation. You're like a person trying to jump across a canyon, but you're only willing to take a half step. You're going to fall, not because you aren't strong enough to make the jump, but because you weren't committed enough to leave the ledge. You're giving yourself an out. And as long as you have an out, you will take it the moment the heat gets turned up. You're playing a game of wait and see while the champions are playing a game of do or die. There is a psychological war happening inside your head called cognitive dissonance. This is why you feel so much anxiety, why you can't sleep at night, and why you're always frustrated. Your brain knows who you claimed you would be, the high performer, the leader, the millionaire. But it sees the data of who you actually are today. The person who hits snooze, the person who cuts corners, the person who keeps a backup plan. That gap between your ideal self and your actual self is where your misery lives. Your brain is stressed because you are a walking contradiction. You are telling your nervous system that this goal is life or death, but your actions are telling your nervous system that it's just a hobby. You cannot find peace until your effort matches your ambition. You are living in a state of internal friction, and that friction is burning up all the energy you should be using to win. I'm giving you a tool right now that's going to make you sweat, but it's the only way to get to the other side. It's called the burn the ships decision. In ancient times, when commanders would land on a foreign shore to conquer a territory, they would order their men to burn the very ships that brought them there. Why? Because it sent a message to the brain. We are either winning this territory or we are dying on this soil, but we are not going back home. I want you to identify the one safety net in your life that is currently making you lazy. Is it that part-time gig you don't need but use as an excuse to not work on your business? Is it the parent you still rely on for rent because you won't step up? Is it the backup plan degree you're pursuing even though you know your heart isn't in it? Pick one and set a hard, non-negotiable expiration date for it. Cut the cord, burn the ship, remove the possibility of retreat. Imagine it's 3 months from today. You've burned the ship. You've told that client or that boss or that safety net that you're done. Now you wake up at 4:30 a.m. and for the first time in your life, you don't have to find motivation. Motivation finds you because you're hungry, you're staring at your bank account or you're mounting tasks, and you realize that there is no one coming to save you. There is no plan B to catch you if you fall. You sit down at that desk and you work with a level of focus you've never possessed before. You aren't checking emails. You're hunting. You aren't trying to get through the day. You're trying to win the decade because you've removed the option of failure. Your brain finally unlocks the 100% capacity it's been hiding from you. You realize that you weren't lazy for the last 5 years. You were just too comfortable to be great. When you start living with this level of intensity, you undergo an identity shift from an option seeker to a closing specialist. You become the person who doesn't leave the field until the job is finished. Period. You stop being the person who explores possibilities, and you become the person who creates realities. You walk into a room and people can feel the weight of your commitment. They can see in your eyes that you aren't there to see how it goes. You're there to dictate how it goes. You become someone who isn't shaken by obstacles because you've already decided that the only way out is through. You shift from being a spectator of your life to being the absolute authority of your future. You don't ask for permission anymore. You just provide results. My challenge to you is the hardest one I've ever given. Stop being a coward and commit. Use the burn the ships decision today. Not next month when you have more savings. Not next year when you feel reedy. Today, if you keep one foot on the dock and one foot in the boat, you're eventually going to fall in the water and drown. Pick a side. Are you a champion? Or are you a hobbyist? Are you a king or are you a commoner? Are you all in or are you just almost there? The world is tired of your almost. Your family is tired of your almost. God is tired of your almost. It's time to stop flirting with your destiny and start marrying it. Give your 100%. Give your 120%. Give your life to the thing that was given to you. You owe it to your bloodline. You owe it to your bloodline. You owe it to your bloodline. Now go burn those ships and go get your life.